Hey guys, welcome back to the Norelco DuoView restoration project. We left off with me throwing the wheels in some rust remover. This time around, rather than using a Vapor Rust, I'm trying this Blaster Metal Rescue, just because I was able to get it locally for a reasonable price. I believe it's a very similar chemical process. They've been soaking overnight, and boy, that was clear liquid when I put them in. Let's take a look. Looks terrible, but that's because I suspect I need to rub it a little. There, rinse it off. So all that black stuff should be corrosion, all that stuff in the liquid there. Delete that. So it looks like there's traces of, maybe this was copper plated at some point. I don't know, but it looks like it did a fine job removing the corrosion. There's all the bearings. It would be nice if I could bust this apart and maybe paint them or something, but this is all hammered together. So they ran the axle through and then peened that over, and same with this top bit. They just splayed out the bottom there, so I'm not going to bust that apart. So I'll use a brass wire brush on it. I'll rinse it off really good. I'll coat it with some rust inhibitor stuff I got, and pack up those bearings with grease, and we should be in business. That's probably going to be the easiest step of this entire restoration, but it's an important one. That is one well lubed up wheel, one down, 3 more to go. Now, I don't doubt I could easily and inexpensively obtain 4 new caster wheels. They're not anything exotic. But I thought it'd be more interesting to keep using the original since they're in pretty decent shape. Made by Faultless. For all I know, they are still in business and maybe even still make the same wheel. But hey, it was easy enough to dunk these overnight and throw a little grease in there. I finished cleaning and lubing up all the wheels, and now I am reinstalling them. The screws I'm using are a bit beefier than the ones that were in there, and they're phosphor bronze, so no chance of corrosion. These two are in fine condition, no tear out on the plywood or anything, so a piece of cake. Both of these had split out, but all the wood was there, so I shot some Titebond 3 on the split out wood, and then the actual wheels themselves serve as nice clamps for most of it, and a little bit was split out here, so put a couple clamps on that, a couple more screws to install on this one, and that should be it for now. Later I probably will go back and remove these again and maybe spray the bottom with shellac or something to seal the wood. Also been examining things more. Some of the screws or nuts, bolts are fine like these, but some of them are pretty corroded, so at some point I'll be taking these out and putting them in the rust remover bath as well. That is very satisfying, smooth as silk. As anybody with a workshop knows, as soon as you have a flat surface, something will end up on top of it. I am reassembling a holiday predictor for a customer. As soon as that's done, I can get it off the top. I want to start working on it because my pony clamps have arrived. I've gotten some good suggestions from viewers. Thanks, guys. One is to see if I could pop this molding off to give me more access to the plywood. Another was to maybe take the top off entirely. Maybe. I know there are some blocks underneath, and it's on there really solidly, whereas the rest, we have some joints that are opening up and separation. This top is on there very, very solidly. It's I've been carrying it around, actually, and this thing weighs I don't know, 80 pounds or so, and it's on there. So I don't want to monkey with it too much. Plus, I don't really think I'll need to. Now, as far as gluing this down, there's a trick I plan to employ. The trick being that the nature of some PVA glues is such that they can reactivate with heat. Meaning, I can slop glue in there. I can clamp it down, but if there's any bubbles or any waviness, I can take an iron or a heat gun and reactivate it, use a J-roller or reclamp it, and work out any defects. Let's move on to the next major bit of cabinet damage, which is this loose side. I noted right away when I picked it up. You can also get a little insight into how this is constructed. So there is actually a mortise and tenon joint between this bottom rail and leg. Obviously we need to get some glue in there. There is not a groove cut. Well, it's a little bit of one, but not really. I thought maybe there was a groove cut into the side for this to fit into the side rail here, but now it's just held on, well, theoretically by these glue blocks, two of them, and I'm sure there was a little bit of glue shot in along the edge of this plywood too, which is about 3/4 inch thick, and they tacked in some nails too. The nail was just right at the edge of this glue block, and that pulled out completely. There's only one nail on this one, and it's just going into the bottom. There's no nail going into this piece. So both these glue blocks failed, and whatever was along here. So I'm going to pry this open as far as I can get it, brush out any debris that's in there, run a nice bead of glue all along the edge of the plywood, on these glue blocks, and of course up in that mortise and tenon joint, and then clamp the heck out of this. Alrighty, that ought to do it. Big bar clamp on the outside leg, couple squeeze clamps around where the wheels are, and some pony clamps in middle with the board so I don't ding up the wood. Squeezed it tight, glue is oozing out. I figure that's a good sign that I've got everything closed up tightly. So, say to clamp for at least 30 minutes and don't stress for 24 hours, so that's what we will do. Alright, let it sit overnight. Just remove the clamps. It is solid. This is the side that had fallen apart. And there is some veneer separation, not surprisingly, because this must have gotten wet. So we'll have to do a little veneer flattening and gluing on that side. I think before I go any further with this, it's time to remove the insides, because I'm going to need to do some major work on this top, and may even remove it if I can, if it's not too tough. It was suggested that I see about removing this molding to gain access to it more easily. Well, as soon as I pulled on this, it just came right off. So the way the molding is attached, they cut a groove into the plywood, and this locks into it. I don't think there are any nails on it, so I can probably remove all that pretty easily. So with that out of the way, I can clamp this down better. You can see how that plywood is separating. Now, before everybody says it, yes, of course, I could replace the entire top with a new piece of plywood and new molding and put new veneer on it. But where's the fun in that? I want to see what I can do with this without putting a crazy amount of effort into it. The value in this set is not the box. It's not exotic veneers or anything like that. It's a wood box. The value in this, the interest in this, is the projection unit inside. So I'm not going to go crazy with this. I also tried removing some of the old finish, and it's stubborn. This might be polyurethane. May or may not be original. I don't think I've ever encountered polyurethane in a late 40s cabinet, but who knows, over the years it might have gotten coated. I say that because I tried using some acetone on it. It didn't really do anything. So then I switched to some more generic gel kind of stripper and put some on, and it sort of did something, but my stripper's also really old. So I don't know. Yet another reason to get all this stuff out, because I might have to really douse this thing with some kind of harsh stripper to get this junk off. That would, well, I was going to say, if this got wet, I was wondering why the finish was still here. But that would explain it, because the polyurethane would hold up much better to water. However, it did all come off on the top, but this looks like it might have gotten far wetter, and maybe they didn't recoat the top. Who knows what happened to this thing over the years. I just know it's a mess right now. But I think I will just try taking the hinges off. This one on this bottom is especially loose. So there's 2 small screws here, 2 here, and then I can see the worm mechanism up top. I try to take those little screws out and take the whole thing out. Eventually I want to take all this stuff out because I want to remove the corrosion and reseat everything. This will be by far and away the trickiest. All the rest of the stuff I can see will come out very easily. There we go, piece of cake. Some really long screws on those hinges, but I got it out and then discovered the high voltage cable appears to be hard wired, so I had to take the power supply out as well, which is just 4 nuts on the bottom. And luckily everything else was a plug, so just unplugged everything and pulled it all out, and that's what we're left with. Next up I want to get that chassis out. I guess pretty much everything else. And then start working on this cabinet again, or more I should say. I've been looking at this finish more, and I'm starting to think this may be a faux finish. Is that... It's so deteriorated it's hard to tell, but I think there's a grain pattern to the finish, but below that it looks like it's just red tinted wood. Doubt it's mahogany, it's probably poplar. You can see on the plywood here, they sprayed it with some kind of red mist, red stain. So... I got a feeling if I strip all this down, it's just all going to be kind of basic secondary wood. Except the top seems a real veneer, and I'm not sure about the size. It looks like it's figured veneer, but I'm just really not sure at this point. So this is pretty much it. This is the protogram projection system. You could buy, I think, back in the day, just this, or certainly if you were a TV manufacturer, you could buy this and put into your set. There were several manufacturers like Scott and I think Spartan used this, where they made projection sets using this system, and they would come pre-configured, meaning it was all assembled and calibrated and set up so you could just plop it into something. So what are we looking at here? Well, on the left side, this is the high voltage power supply. This would supply the 25,000 volts or so for the CRT. Inside of this, it's kind of sealed. Part of it's sealed anyways. Let's see if I can get the top off here. There's a tripler inside here, and there are 3 high voltage rectifiers, and they are sealed in oil, and you cannot realistically service it. That is the tube that drives it. So it's like you see in electrostatic sets, where it's a self-contained oscillator driving the primary with feedback, and a step-up transformer inside here, and then with a tripler on it, so there'll be 3 rectifiers and several high voltage capacitors to step it up all the way to 25,000 volts. Inside of this can, we have those rectifier tubes, the step-up transformer, and it's all potted in oil, I do believe. I have seen photos of someone who took it apart and perhaps replace those tubes. I'm not sure, but I hope we don't ever have to get to that, because the oil that you need to use needs to be something that has a high voltage dielectric, and I don't know that you can get something that's non-toxic and non-lethal these days. Down below this, it does appear there are some components. You can take the shield off and perhaps get at them. Looks like there's an electrolytic there. There's another tube. It's so dirty I can't quite tell. But there may be some components we'll need to replace down in there. And then we get to this, which is, well, There's a board on this that's what has the hinges on it, so you can tilt it. That would not normally be part of it. Would be part of it is the rest of this. So, starting at this end, that is a little base of the 3-inch projection CRT sticking out there. Then we have I believe a focus coil and a deflection yoke. And then it enters inside here, so the CRT actually goes inside, and that's the end of it there. To the left, we have a mirror, a front surface mirror at a 45-degree angle, with a hole in the middle. Yeah, the projection CRT goes through one of the mirrors. On this side, we have the concave mirror, and then we have a corrective lens. So, the projection CRT shines its light that way into that mirror that goes back this way, hits the 45-degree mirror that's like this, and comes out this way, and then this corrects for whatever it needs to correct, the curvature of that lens, or that mirror rather. And as we can see, there are a whole bunch of adjustments here. So this all needs to be angled properly to get a focused image out of it. There's a picture at the Early Television Foundation Museum showing the calibration CRT that Philips had. It's one of these projection CRTs that has a pattern on the front of it. And they would have put that in here and then shown this onto a wall or a screen and then adjusted all this stuff. Without having that, I don't dare touch any of this stuff until I get the whole thing working. And then perhaps if I can find any kind of documentation on what each of these does, I might tweak them. I imagine the one here, and there's probably several others, will be for adjusting this focus coil yoke to probably get better focus or to center the image. The rest of these are going to be more on the optics stuff. So when you talk about recoating the front surface mirror, the main one you'd want to recoat is this 45-degree flat mirror with a hole in the middle. The one that is curved, I have not heard about that needing to get resurfaced. This one does, and I can see this one's a bit cloudy. Apparently just normal operation because of the ozone that's generated or some such. It corrodes the silver surface, and I can see this one is a bit corroded. But we're not going to worry about that until we get this thing completely working. To get at it, well, as you can see, the side comes off. There's a whole bunch of screws on the side, so this whole side could come off, probably the opposite side. I can see there are connections here, or screws, and this can come out. I have heard that this corrective lens is fairly custom for each one of these. I don't know how true that is. It doesn't look like anything, right? It looks like just a sheet of plastic, but apparently it has some special properties. They just call it a corrective lens. You can see there's a CP90 in the middle there. Now, it does seem bizarre that you could have a CRT going through a hole in a mirror, and then this has this big black thing in the middle, yet it produces a coherent image without a hole in the middle in the end. It's a crazy design. It's called a folded projection system. Crazy system. Now, one thing that does make me a little nervous is this guy. It can move in and out, and there are these weird braided things down in there. And like a rubber band around it. I don't recall seeing it on other units, so I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, while I've got it out, I can certainly do some basic cleaning. So we can do some brushing and vacuuming and get all this debris out of here. I can remove some of this hardware and throw it in a bath to remove the corrosion. This is part of the tilt assembly. Meanwhile, there is a little bit more of electronics in the cabinet. And I can start doing more repairs on it. But really the big task is going to be, I need to retrieve and restore an entire television to go with this. Because this is basically all there is. it's the TV that drives this yoke, that provides the video signal, that provides the audio, that tunes in the station. And you kind of have to butcher it to wire it into this set. I only have one restored TV that would be suitable, and I'm not going to cut it up, and that'd be an RCA 630TS. I did years ago where I restuffed all the caps. It's really nice. I'm not going to mess that one up. Instead, I have an RCA AT241 I've mentioned a bunch of times that I think is kind of ugly, and I've never done anything with it. That's the one. So that has to get retrieved. It weighs 80, 90 pounds. It's a beast, and I need to completely recap it and get it working and hook it up to this before we can see what this can do. Because I can't power this up without anything driving this yoke, where I will immediately destroy this projection CRT. And when I do first try this out, I need to make darn sure that the brightness is turned down all the way. If I have something like I don't have vertical deflection and just a horizontal line, it will just sear a line in the face of that CRT. And these are a bit hard to find, and I'd rather not destroy one if I don't have to, so we're going to be very, very ginger about that. So what I'll probably do, what I will attempt to do, is disconnect the high voltage or somehow be able to power up the other. Of course, I can see the other TV works because I can use the picture tube that's inside of it. But I also need to make sure that these deflection yokes, the windings are sound and that they're working. So I'll do what I can to try to provide some safeguards. One part down, many to go. I gave this a bath in Metal Rescue rust remover, dried it off, and then coated it with Bowie Shield T9. That's a liquid wax type product. I'm going to break off for now. I'm going to continue to clean this carefully, think about what I want to do with the cabinet, and start planning on getting the RCA set out of storage and start working on it. Thanks for watching.